Alto is a miserable loser who won't graduate as a magician because he can't even summon an Isekai protagonist. However, his life took a turn when he accidentally unseal a demon baddie, who is the most powerful demon in the world, and make a contract with her. Now he will pass his grades but will have to deal with a demon wanting to break his magic wand. Before all this, on a certain morning, a teacher at Ortesia Magica Academy crushed Alto's dreams of becoming the next Merlin by telling him that his score in the summoning exam was a big fat 0. Despite his excellent scores in other fields, he couldn't advance to second year if he couldn't form a contract with a familiar. Alto was feeling depressed about the teacher's words when he was approached by his friend Lilia, who asked what the teacher said. When he told her, Lilia picked up a rock in an attempt to crack the teacher's skull open. Afterwards, he went into the library to study summoning. He knew that compatibility was essential for a successful summoning, so he decided to try summoning something really weird or unique. Just then, a strange book fell on his head, and when he picked it up, he realized that it was really old. When he got to his dorm room, he celebrated the fact that the book was a summoning book, and decided to try it out because the magic circle he found in it was still legible. He drew the magic circle on the floor using chalk, and chanted the words in the book which made the magic circle emit some powerful aura. Alto got excited about this surprising result, and he recited the remaining part of the spell in a dominant manner, before pouring a drop of his blood in the magic circle. This caused smoke to cover the area, and Alto was happy about the fact that he finally completed a summoning ritual, but his joy turned into confusion when he saw a purple-haired demonic baddie named Vermeil, who had 0 armor on at the moment. Vermeil asked if he was the one who summoned her, but Alto couldn't muster up an answer because he was trying to figure out what she was. When he brought up the fact that her plots were hanging out, she started to tease him intensely by offering to make all of his virgin fantasies come true. However, Alto said he wanted her to be his familiar instead. And this caused a powerful glowing aura to envelop both of them, which created a magic crest on Alto's hand as well as the chest of Vermeil. Alto was surprised about the fact that he finally had a familiar, but things got weird real fast when Vermeil started to absorb Alto's mana by kissing him. Afterwards, she introduced herself as a demon and started to treat his man parts like Play-Doh until he yelled at her to put some clothes on. Vermeil complained that his clothes couldn't fit her, so he recommended some of his sister's clothes, which ended up making her look too hot for his tiny brain to handle. Afterwards, Vermeil informed him that the reason no other familiar could come close to him all this time was because his mana was extremely potent and could be considered as a lethal poison for most beings. Alto asked why Vermeil decided to be his familiar despite the fact that she would have refused or even unalived him at the spot. So she explained that she owed him for helping her escape the book which she'd been trapped in for a long time. He asked why someone sealed her into the book, but instead of giving him a straight answer, she got cozy with him and said she did a lot of naughty things. The next day, Alto introduced Vermeil as his familiar to his teacher, who called him a desperate simp for trying to claim a woman as his familiar, and also reminding him that they didn't allow guests on campus. Vermeil interrupted the old geezer by claiming that she was his familiar and proving it by showing him the glowing familiar crest on her chest. The old loser started drooling at the sight of her magnificent milk factories, but he regained some composure as he announced that Alto had passed his summoning exam. He asked Vermeil if she was okay with the arrangement of being the familiar of a worthless twerp, and she confirmed that she was, so he gave them permission to take their seats in class. During class, the teacher called them out for Seuss behavior, but Vermeil gaslighted him by saying he was trying to make Alto to be distant from his familiar, unlike the rest of the class. Lilia was about to lose her mind in jealousy, but she gained some comfort from the fact that Alto would get to move to second year with her. Eventually, Vermeil's teasing got too much for her to handle, so she yelled at them, causing the teacher to punish her by telling her to stand in the hallway. Lilia met up with Alto and Vermeil after school and demanded to know what was going on between them. Alto and Vermeil had agreed earlier to hide the fact that Vermeil was a demon by using magic to hide her horns in order not to trigger any backlash, since humans hated demons in their world. Because of this, Alto introduced her as a regular human familiar to Lilia, but Lilia wasn't having any of their nonsense because she took off her tie and threw it in face. She challenged Alto to a duel under the condition that if she wins, Alto would have to leave Vermeil at home unless she was needed. Vermeil was confused about the concept of duels, so Alto explained that conflicts between students at their school were resolved by strictly regulated duels to prevent chaos. Alto was feeling distressed about the fact that his friend was acting sassy towards him, but Vermeil convinced him to partake in the duel and even stipulated that Lilia would have to obey any request from Alto if she loses. Minutes later, they arrived at the grounds for their duel, where Lilia summoned her winged familiar named Sylphide, which Vermeil noticed was a high-class wind spirit. Lilia boasted about her super powerful wind spell before throwing one at Alto, and the Virgin was about to soil himself before Vermeil swooped in front of him to block the attack. Everyone's jaws dropped to the floor when they saw that Lilia's ultimate attack didn't even leave a scratch on Vermeil, making Lilia wet her pants and beg in a sus way for mercy. Vermeil and Alto were declared the winners, and Alto requested for Lilia and Vermeil to be friends, so they cheerfully shook hands. That evening, Vermeil told Alto that Lilia had feelings for him, but Alto argued that she was only his childhood friend. Afterwards, Vermeil drained his mana once again in a sus way, and he asked why she needed to do so. Vermeil explained that being sealed away for centuries had weakened her, so she needed his potent mana to maintain her physical form. Alto brought up form a contract with a demon, which meant that Alto was special for being able to handle it. Several days later, Alto and Vermeil were walking into school when a high-class familiar in the form of a dragon ran loose. It charged at Vermeil, but she folded it in seconds with a single finger flick. A while later, the headmaster of Ortigia Magic School congratulated Alto's class for moving to a higher grade and informed them that they'd begin to delve into a deeper study of magic. While the old fart was yapping, Alto was chewing Vermeil out for showing off how overpowered she was in front of everyone, despite his pleadings for her not to stand out at school, and they were interrupted when Alto spotted all the simps in the area staring at her massive bazookas. Afterwards, the second years were in a class headed by a female old fart this time, who informed them that all their classes would involve their familiar. She explained that familiars needed to be treated with love and care in order to strengthen the connection with the master, but if the love isn't sincere, the master could get brutally clapped by their own familiar. In another class, they were informed that demon seals are composed of hundreds of layers of barriers and circles that make it impossible for a demon to be released in the demon world, and added that these seals are the reasons demons no longer threaten the livelihood of humans. However, Lilia couldn't hear a word he said, because she was too busy drowning in jealousy at the sight of Vermeil getting cuddly with Alto. After school, the three of them were having a friendly chat when they were approached by two strange-looking guys, one of which had aura and the other was a scared loser who was trying to get his friend to fight Vermeil. The one with aura introduced himself as a dragon rider named Rex, and his loser friend brought up the fact that Vermeil one-shotted his dragon, but Alto and the girls were too busy trying to figure out what a dragon rider even meant to give them attention. They eventually figured out that dragon riders are mages who have dragons as their familiars, and Rex tried to pick a fight with them, but Alto and Vermeil executed a plan where Vermeil distracted the two dragon gooners with teases, creating an opportunity for Alto to immobilize them from behind using his crystal magic. However, Rex broke through the crystal by summoning his powerful familiar named Tyrannosuke, and Alto was terrified when he saw that it was a dinosaur. Rex gave them a chance to avoid being annihilated by offering Vermeil a chance to make up for what she did by having some personal fun with him. Alto refused on her behalf, so Rex decided to get violent by sending Tyrannosuke after them. Vermeil suddenly hugged Alto from behind and transferred all the magic power she'd absorbed from him earlier back into his body, causing it to manifest as a huge magic circle glowing with golden aura. When the dinosaur tried to turn Alto to dinner, a huge pile of crystals appeared in front of him, which took the dinosaur down and injured Rex on the chin. When they got home, Alto told Vermeil that drawing attention to herself would only cause more problems for them, but she changed the topic by asking Alto what he wanted to be in life. Alto replied that he wanted to be an incredible mage, and explained that their nation's mages consisted of golden squares, silver squares, bronze squares, and apprentice mages. He added that getting even a bronze square was extremely hard, and only a few mages at the academy ever rose to silver. She asked if he wanted to be a gold square, but Alto replied that his goal was even bigger than that, because he aimed to become a platinum square mage, which was a group of elite gold square mages recognized as world-class talent. He thought it was an embarrassing goal given the fact that he nearly repeated a grade, but Vermeil motivated him by planting his face in her melons and promising to make his dream come true. The next day in school, Alto and the girls were having a friendly conversation when they were approached by two fellow second years named Marx and Cheryl. Alto revealed to the girls that Marx was a really cool guy whose family was one of the great noble houses. Their playtime was interrupted when their teacher called for a meeting with them. They met up with the principal and brought up the issue of selecting a class rep for the second-year students, and said that he'd devised a special trial for Alto, Lilia, and Cheryl to determine the person most fit for that position. They went to a special forest where they were meant to retrieve a fairy flower by the 6 p.m. bell, and Lilia explained that the fairy flowers are rare flowers often used to craft potions. Mark started mouthing off about how he was going to easily steamroll through the task and dub the W, so Cheryl reminded him that he wasn't selected by the principal because he was failing all 9 subjects. He summoned his familiar, which was a rhinoceros beetle named Francois, and bragged as he ran into the forest. But unfortunately, he was clapped in seconds by a plant monster. Cheryl told them to go ahead while she rescued her goofy master from his pitiful situation, and it didn't take long before Alto and Lilia found the fairy flower. Unfortunately, they noticed that there was a dangerous 3-headed monster named Cerberus guarding it, and Lilia reminded Alto that they weren't working as a team as she unveiled her plan to use an invisibility potion to slip past the monster and grab the plant. He brought up the fact that Cerberus had a great sense of smell, so she pointed out that one of them had a runny nose, which meant that their smelling ability would be impaired. She drank the potion and turned invisible, but was feeling too embarrassed about the fact that she was completely armorless in front of Alto and Vermeil. Alto asked Vermeil about the power which she gave him during the battle against the dragon nerds, and she revealed that it was an amplified version of the mana which he already gave her. He asked her to do it again, and she replied that he didn't have to because smiting the Cerberus would be very easy for them. She suddenly pounced on him and replicated some of the most intense Game of Thrones scenes with him in order to absorb and amplify his mana. Lilia tried to get past Cerberus, but unfortunately one of its heads sniffed her out and tried to turn her into a chew toy before Otto blasted it with magic energy. Cerberus charged at Alto, so he urged Lilia to go after the fairy flower as he held it off using his crystal magic attacks. When he signaled Vermeil, she fired an insanely powerful dark magic attack that destroyed the monster while Lilia retrieved the flower. Afterwards, Lilia handed the flower to Alto and claimed that he deserved to have it, but Alto brought up the fact that her invisibility spell had come undone, and her plots were showing clearly. This made her lose her mind to the point where she let go of the flower and it landed in a spot where Cheryl picked it up right in time for the 6 p.m. bell. That evening, Alto and the gang congratulated Cheryl on her new class rep position and swore to each other that they'd try harder to win next time. A couple of days later, Vermeil was walking to school with Alto when they encountered a bunch of students fawning over a group of dragon riders flying in the area led by a girl named Chris. During PE class, Marx revealed to them that Chris was the captain and founder of the Dragon Riders who led them to their position in power, and added that the Royal Air Force was already scouting her out. He continued his glazing by revealing that Chris was one of the 7 gold square mages at the school, and also that she's an executive officer of the student council. This info quickly turned Alto into a fanboy of hers, but Vermeil was a bit confused, so Lilia explained that the student council executives were the top students at the school, which comprises 5 out of 7 of the school's gold square mages. She added that the offers to join the student council executives are chosen from different committees or clubs to form the highest ranking body at the academy, and not even the professors at the academy could lace their boots. Alto knew that the student council president of the academy was close to becoming a platinum square mage, and that he wished to be like them someday, but Vermeil interrupted him by stacking her melons on his face, which caused a bit of bickering between her and Lilia. Hours later, Lilia was in the changing room with Cheryl, where she brought up how weird it was that Vermeil was a familiar despite being a regular human, and that she was capable of doing something which not even gold square mages could do, which was taking out the Cerberus with one attack. Cheryl agreed with her points, so she decided to expose Vermeil for the fraud that she was. When Cheryl asked if she liked Alto, Lilia struggled to compose herself as she replied that she just cared so much for him because they'd known each other for so long. Cheryl gave her a warning to act fast because feelings could get more complicated the longer they know each other, and it was at that moment that Lilia realized that Vermeil was doing something sus with Alto somewhere. Several hours later, Alto and the girls were walking down the hallway when the members of the student council walked by. As they moved past Alto's gang, Chris made eye contact with Vermeil, and this got her curious as to what Vermeil actually was. That evening, Alto was in the shower, gawking over how cool the student council members looked when Vermeil joined him and pinned him to the wall in a sus way. She asked him if he wanted to surpass the student council members, but he struggled to give a cohesive answer thanks to the gigantic milk factories pressing against his body, so she assured him that she'd make his dreams come true. That evening, Chris beat up Rex for losing a duel to a pipsqueak like Alto, who didn't even have a proper familiar, and asked him to lick his own blood from her shoe in order to keep his spot at the Dragon Riders. However, Rex realized that the group was composed of nothing but scumbags, so he told her he was quitting, and this only made Chris beat him up even more before expressing her interest in Alto. The next day, Alto and the girls visited Rex at the school infirmary, where he stopped his brother from telling them how he really got injured, before asking Alto how he felt about dinosaurs. Alto gave the classic geek boy answer, talking about how they were big and cool, but Rex replied in a distressed manner as he told them to leave him alone. Realizing what really happened, Alto got so angered that he ignored the pleadings of Lilia and went on to challenge Chris to a duel. When he and Vermeil got to the dueling grounds, Chris trash-talked them for several minutes before summoning her familiar, which was a huge dragon named Whirlwind. At Alto's command, Vermeil shared all of his amplified golden mana by kissing him, and this dropped the jaws of everyone who watched. Alto swore that he'd fight with everything he had, while Rex's brother rushed to the hospital to tell him what Alto was up to. Alto sent a huge crystal attack at Chris, which she destroyed easily, before firing a flame ball that was ultimately blocked by Vermeil. She fired a barrage of flame attacks, which Vermeil blocked at the cost of her own body, and all attempts by Alto to fight back with crystal attacks proved futile as they were destroyed by Chris's fire attacks. Chris realized that Arata was no average Joe because his mana levels, formulaic execution, and casting speed were all exceptional for a second-year student. When Vermeil blocked an enormous flame attack which was sent at Alto, Chris asked what Vermeil was, but Vermeil replied by telling Alto to go all out. They created a glowing magic circle that launched several powerful crystal attacks at Chris, and they thought it got the job done, only fit Chris to appear unscathed on top of her dragon. While riding her dragon, Chris fired several flame attacks at Arata, but he managed to dodge before blasting her with some more crystal attacks. Chris easily danced around his attacks before asking him to beg for life if he didn't want to end up like Rex. Alto asked her why she looked down on people, and she replied by explaining that the reason people were so terrified of dragons was their wings, which gave them the ability to fly through the heavens. She bragged about how she owned the skies before firing another powerful barrage of flame attacks from above, which the student council members who watched thought would be the end of the duel. However, Vermeil refused to back down as she told Alto she was going to punch Chris's teeth and motivated him to keep charging up mana. Chris kept piling on insults and attacks at them, until Arata remembered his conversation with Rex, which made him argue with her opinion of a familiar being a power tool by telling her that a familiar was a precious companion. She told him to put his money where his mouth was, so Vermeil promised him that they'd crush Chris's face as well as her ideals as a golden mana, covered both of them. Chris fired another massive fireball at them, and Alto reacted by sending a huge crystal attack in her direction. The flame ball ended up destroying the crystal, but Chris noticed that Vermeil and Alto had disappeared from the spot they were. They appeared above her by stepping on the crystal shards in the area, and Rex, who was on his hospital bed, told his brother that there was no way Alto could beat Chris. However, Rex was dead wrong, because Arata landed on top of Chris's dragon and pointed a shard of crystal at her throat, which finalized her defeat, causing the spectating crowd to cheer loudly. After the battle, Alto became the ultimate gigachad of the school because all the female students crowded him in a way that made Lilia nearly explode out of jealousy. He was approached by a teacher named Obsidian, who warned him not to challenge others to a duel on a whim, because he could have been asked to do something unspeakable if he lost. Lilia defended him by bringing up the fact that he had a reason for the duel, so Obsidian cheered him up by patting him on the head and telling him not to overdo it with the whole wannabe Superman act. Some hours later, Rex met up with Chris, who was sweeping up the schoolyard, and asked what she was doing. Chris said she had to do it because the rules demanded her to do so for losing a duel, and then apologized for what she did to him. That evening, Vermeil got into Alto's bed while he was sleeping and started smooching him. So he scolded her by saying that kissing should be reserved for only someone you love. She responded by coming in close to him and confessing that she loved him a lot. The next day, Alto and the girls walked through the halls, and he was disoriented because he couldn't figure out if Vermeil's confession to him was legit or not. He asked Obsidian if a demon could fall in love with a human, and the teacher replied by telling him about some folk stories about women bearing children of demons, also revealing that there were demons called succubus. Alto asked if a succubus could fall in love with a human, but Obsidian crushed his virgin dreams by saying that it could only be because they wanted mana. During dinner that evening, Arata asked Vermeil if she only liked him because she got a chance to drain his mana, and she responded by hugging him tightly before giving him a kiss. Alto was about to yell at her for treating his face like a juice box again, but realized that she didn't drain his mana that time, and she confirmed that she loved him. When she tried to kiss him some more times, Alto's pea-sized brain finally overheated as he pushed her away and said he couldn't do any more that night. The next day, Alto met up with Obsidian and apologized for troubling him with his goofy loverboy questions, but Obsidian said he was glad because Alto seemed a lot more positive than he was the previous day. He went further to explain that love isn't easy whether it was with demons or humans, and advised Alto to be careful because every woman was a feisty little demon. Afterwards, a female student met up with Obsidian in his study room and confessed that she loved him. He confessed that he loved her as well before using a weird drug on her that froze her solid. By the next day, the news spread that a fourth year was found frozen in her room, and the student council held a meeting about it where the vice president named Ryuga brought up the fact that it was the fourth time that was happening that year. They looked through the victim's details and realized that it was a Silver Square's ice magic specialist named Emma, and the dueling committee chairlady named Jessica brought up the fact that it took 2 hours of severe effort to save Emma. They knew that it was the third Silver Square mage to fall into a coma that year, meaning there was someone behind it, and they felt that the student council president would be in shambles after hearing of that news. At the same time, Alto measured Vermeil's height because of homework from one of the teachers, which was to write a report about his familiar's physical features and favorite activities. Vermeil took off her plot armors and placed Alto's hands firmly on her milk factories, while asking him to take her measurements, causing Lilia, who was eavesdropping, to lose her mind. She decided to stop them herself using the invisibility potion as well as a copy of Alto's room key, which she mysteriously had. But when she got into Alto's room, things got wild as Alto unknowingly poked her plot point while trying to pick out a book on the shelf. Vermeil told Alto that he'd made great progress towards his goal by defeating a gold square, so he informed her that gold squares weren't awarded for just sheet power but also for accomplishments in research. He also brought up how overpowered Chris was, and said they would have been cooked if Chris had gone all out. At the same time, Chris was getting floored by Rex, who now looked possessed along with his dinosaur familiar. During his past years, Rex got excited after summoning a dragon egg, because he knew it would hatch into an overpowered beast, and when he met Chris, they quickly became friends because of how optimistic she was about his soon-to-be-born familiar. Alto and Vermeil were at the market, and she kissed him in public after he agreed to get her a treat, causing him to feel embarrassed. When she started draining his mana again, they were interrupted by Rex's brother, who told them about the situation with Rex and Chris. Meanwhile, Chris tried to fight back by firing a large ball of fire at Rex, but he tanked it with no effort as he marched towards her and kicked her harder than a soccer ball. He talked about how much his anger kept increasing as he manifested a giant rocky fist from the ground which punched Chris and allowed him to continue beating her to a pulp. When Alto and Vermeil showed up, Rex tossed a bloodied Chris at them, who told Alto to run, but Alto only got enraged as he asked Rex if he was the one who hurt Chris. Rex confirmed that he was the one before creating a huge wave of dark mana that made him and his familiar look even more terrifying than they already did. Just then, the student council president named Elena rushed into the scene and folded Rex in seconds using a move she called Judgment Sword. She went to meet Chris, but instead of checking on her, she belittled her for losing to a lowly mongrel, and Rex tried to fight back but fainted again. When everyone ran in to check on him, Elena asked Vermeil if she knew what the source of Rex's dark power was, and Vermeil replied that she had no idea. 3 days later, Alto and the gang were notified that the bronze certification exam was coming soon, and Lilia noticed that Alto was still bugged about the whole Rex thing, so she advised him to focus on the journey ahead. As a bit of extra motivation, she said Rex would feel bummed if he failed the exam and remained a cannon fodder, but if he passed, he could stand as someone who was officially on Rex's level. Vermeil suddenly asked to go back to their room to get some rest, and this made Alto worried because it was out of character for her. However, Lilia decided to seize the opportunity of having Alto all to herself by inviting him to study alone with her somewhere private, and Alto agreed to join her. Vermeil met Obsidian on her way back to the dorm and accused him of being the culprit behind the weird occurrences at the school and brought up the fact that there were several low-tier demons hanging around him as evidence. As she walked away, she advised him to stop because the power he was infusing into people was too much for humans to handle and threatened to rip him to shreds if he ever went after Otto. Her words made Obsidian smile as he realized that Vermeil was a powerful demon, and as she tried to power walk away, he ambushed her by injecting her with his special drug that made her powers go haywire. Meanwhile, Lilia was trying to force Alto into doing some bedroom dances with her when the crest on Alto's hand began to emit a weird dark aura. Just then, they heard a loud noise in the area, and looked outside the window to see Vermeil in a compromised state. Elena and other top mages at the school quickly sensed Vermeil's magic power, and the student council president wasted no time before rushing to the scene. She was stopped by some low-tier demons which surrounded her and combined into a hulking figure that said they wouldn't let her pass. At the same time, Vermeil fully went into demon form, and Obsidian felt proud about the fact that her attacks in that form were so powerful that they'd give even Saitama a run for his money. Obsidian placed a magical leash on Vermeil and gloated about how she was the product of all of the great research he's done before Alto arrived at the scene. Alto was surprised to see Vermeil looking like something out of the scariest horror movie he knew, but he and Lilia were even more surprised to see Obsidian pulling her strings. Obsidian demonstrated his control over her by using the chains to make her kneel, and once again started boasting about how a powerful demon was acting like his own personal mutt. Alto asked Obsidian what was going on, so he revealed that he established a magical means of causing madness, which he condensed into a liquid form and explained that if caused the powers of whomever got injected with it to go berserk. He yapped about how he used 5 students, which he referred to as guinea pigs, to test out this drug, and eventually landed on great success by succeeding in using it on a demon. Alto's 2 remaining brain cells still couldn't piece everything together, so Obsidian plainly confessed that he was the mastermind behind all of the mysterious things that have been happening at the school. Alto was frozen speechless after hearing this confession, but even more gutted by the sight of his beloved familiar acting like a rogue hollow from Bleach, so he screamed out of anger, which caused his mana to spill in the area and break the chain which Obsidian was holding. Vermeil immediately tried to unalive Obsidian with a brutal attack, but Alto jumped in to stop her and ended up getting turned into a donut. Meanwhile, the real Vermeil was drowning in a dark potion of her own mind when a door of light suddenly opened that showcased Alto smiling at her. Vermeil's demonic form got even more terrifying as she marched towards Obsidian to land the finishing blow on him, but Alto stopped her once again by hugging her. Vermeil asked Alto why he saved a no-good dirtbag like Obsidian, and he replied that he moved without thinking, and added that it was because he was Vermeil's master. She cried after realizing how injured he was, and he assured her that everything was going to be okay before losing consciousness. Lilia feared that Alto had been unalived, but Vermeil claimed she'd never let him die as she transferred golden mana into his body by kissing him and healed him of his injuries. Obsidian lost his mind and injected his weird drug into himself, which caused his body to mutate into a huge, disgusting-looking monster which he described as the ultimate demon that fed upon hundreds of low-tier demons. He tried to take Vermeil out with a huge drill attack, but Vermeil pulled a Saitama as she destroyed half of his entire body with a single punch. Obsidian was stunned by this and tried to escape by flying away, but his path was blocked off by Chris, who fired a flame ball at him. He desperately tried to run in a desperate direction, but Vermeil appeared behind him and used a Mortal Kombat fatality move to defeat the corny loser once and for all. She, however, decided that she wouldn't unalive him because of the efforts made by Alto. When Alto woke up, Lilia expressed how worried she was for him, and he was surprised about the fact that all of his injuries were healed. Meanwhile, the demonic monster that was fighting Elena vanished into thin air but told Elena that they'd meet again on its way out. Later that evening, Vermeil brought up the fact that she unalived Alto, and revealed that his heart was only beating because her mana had been knit together as one with his own. When she apologized, Alto said she didn't need to, because the whole thing wasn't her fault, but she claimed that it was more serious than that because the heart beating in his chest was the heart of a true demon. She informed him that he'd die if she dies, and Alto got sad because the fact that the reverse was true meant that she could no longer live for centuries like a regular demon. Obsidian ended up getting arrested by the Ortega city guard. Rex woke up the next day to find Chris resting beside him, and all the other victims of Obsidian woke up from their coma as well. Things were a bit different between Alto and Vermeil, because he now needed Vermeil's mana for his heart to function, and Vermeil stopped talking to him in a friendly manner. When Alto asked why she was acting cold to him, she brought up her terrifying demon form and said that he didn't need to be around a terrifying monster like that. She said she intended to take responsibility for his current predicament by returning the mana he gives her to feed his heart for decades until the heart can finally work on its own. When she said she'd go hide in another book, Alto got angry and kissed her. She noticed that he didn't drain any mana, and he claimed that he wanted her by his side forever as he pinned her to the wall. Vermeil remembered their previous conversation, where he said kissing should be reserved for someone you love, and this made her embarrassed as she realized that he loved her. That night, Vermeil watched Alto sleep in his room, but couldn't muster up the courage to steal a kiss from him like she normally does. And when he called her name in his sleep, she let out a warm smile. The next day, Alto watched as the girls in class mourned the loss of Obsidian, while the boys cried over the fact that Vermeil wasn't around for them to gaze at her milky treasure chests. Alto told the guys that she wasn't feeling well, but Vermeil was actually the one who requested some alone time earlier that day, and he wondered if buying her a dessert would cheer her up. Lilia met up with Vermeil at a bridge, and revealed that Alto told her about the fact that she was a demon, so Vermeil apologized for lying about who she was. When Lilia asked if Vermeil did any weird stuff to Alto, she remembered Alto's kiss and shyly admitted to it, so Lilia decided to give her a pass that time. Vermeil asked Lilia if she was scared of her, and Lilia replied that there was no reason to be scared, which made Vermeil bring up the fact that she stabbed Alto. Lilia said it didn't matter that she was a powerful demon, implying that all that mattered was how she felt about Alto and how Alto felt about her. She said Vermeil needed to give Alto some credit because she knew Alto would be there to stop her if she ever got out of hand again. When she saw Vermeil still wearing a sobby expression on her face, she gave her a karate chop on her head and told her that she needed to lean on Alto more because mages are willing to sacrifice themselves at any moment for their familiars. That evening, Alto met up with Vermeil at home, who passionately confessed that she still wanted to be with him, despite knowing all the dangers that she's already brought into his life. Alto felt relieved and promised her that she was going to work hard in order to become the best master for her. He told her to lean on him if she needed anything, and tried to hand her some crepes, but she said she wanted to kiss him instead. Vermeil shared a passionate kiss with him, and told him that she wanted him to kiss her as well because she couldn't stop thinking about him, even when she was alone at the waterway, so he gave her an intense kiss. The next day, Vermeil wore a school uniform at Alto's request, and he was feeling worried about the fact that her massive hangers were exposed because the buttons couldn't hold up. Elsewhere, a mysterious hooded boy named Iolite was talking to his associate named Helio about how worthless Obsidian ended up being in his plans until a random mage tried ambushing him. A large magical figure appeared, which took out the wannabe assassin, and Iolite decided that it was time to take things into their own hands. At school, Vermeil and Alto were walking through the halls when all the boys in school randomly started praising Alto for bringing back their glorious thick queen, and one of them confessed that he was glad to see the pair together again. He brought up the fact that the bronze exam was coming up, so Alto motivated Vermeil to give it her all, and she translated it by doing some forbidden moves on him in the corner of the school where no one could see them. When they got back to class, the student council executive suddenly showed up led by Elena, who told Alto that he was being taken into custody. They were taken to the student council room where Alto was determined to protect Vermeil no matter what went down, and he asked Elena why they were brought there. She started off by apologizing for the injuries he sustained during the Obsidian incident, and revealed that they were unable to get any information out of Obsidian because he escaped from the Ortega arcane jail. Elena brought up the fact that Alto's team fought him in his transformed state and asked him to give her any information he had on him. Alto felt relieved and offered to tell them everything he knew until Elena switched gears by asking if he was hiding anything from them with a cold expression on her face. Before Alto could react, Jessica already had him at blade point, and Vermeil could make a move to save him, because she was surrounded by several floating magical daggers summoned by Ryuga. She told Ryuga that those blades weren't enough to stop her, but he replied that they only needed to distract her for a few seconds, which would leave an opening for Jessica to decapitate Alto in a single slice. When Elena asked the question again, Alto tried to lie, but Vermeil signaled him not to, so he revealed that Vermeil was a demon, and told them all about his contract with Vermeil, which included the demon heart he currently had. He explained that she wasn't a bad demon and said he was ready to be expelled if it meant that they spare Vermeil. He went further by saying that he was prepared to oppose anyone who opposed his familiar with all he had, even if they turned out to be the student council executives. However, Elena said that she didn't intend on putting them in any form of trouble or even informing the teachers because having a demon on their side could prove to be useful. Ryuga supported Elena's motion by bringing up the fact that they couldn't even trust their own faculty after what happened with Obsidian. Jessica tried to argue against them, but Elena said they didn't need to worry about them, because all she needed to do to take them down was behead them, since their lives are already intertwined. When Vermeil asked what Elena was plotting, she said she believed they were trustworthy, and asked Alto to join the executive committee of the student council. Alto asked if it was because they wanted to keep a close eye on him, and Elena confirmed his suspicions to be true, before saying that she genuinely wanted to join the student council, because he managed to defeat Chris, who was one of the top 5 students at the academy. She also brought up the fact that they still weren't aware of the real purpose behind the recent attacks on the students, and asked him to use his powers to protect the academy. When Alto told Lilia about this, she freaked out and started asking a billion questions, and he replied in the manner which Elena told him to, which was to say they scouted him because of his talent. Lilia said Alto was amazing because he was finally making some progress in his goals to move up in the school rankings, but swore that she'd one-up him by getting a better score than him in the bronze exam. That evening, Vermeil asked why Alto was feeling down, and he said it was because they were forced into a position with the student council because people ended up finding out what Vermeil was. She calmed him down by assuring him that the student council nerds wouldn't monitor him 24/7, and warned him to be careful around Elena because she had an inhuman vibe about her. She brought up how she noticed Elena was prepared to unalive Alto instantly if he lied to her about Vermeil's identity or if he turned down their final offer to join the student council. Alto changed the subject by talking about how he would have been able to protect her better and keep her secret if he was stronger. He concluded that he needed to get stronger so Vermeil would no longer be in danger, and she responded by using all of the greatest OnlyFans techniques on him. Meanwhile, Elena was at a temple remembering the words of Alto, and she got so excited about the fact that she'd found Vermeil, who was the demon known as the world's greatest scourge, that she beheaded a statue in the area. The next day, Alto promised Vermeil that he would become the strongest person in the world, but when he entered the student council room, he saw all of the female executives in a compromised position. Jessica tried to force him into committing seppuku, but Elena said it wasn't his fault, because they were the ones who clumsily left the doors open. Elena brought out a magical element used by the maid she fought during the obsidian incident, and when Chris analyzed it using magic, she said it was no ordinary paper golem. Elena revealed that the magic behind that item was a form of magic which wasn't even recorded in their history books because that single piece of paper contains a magic formula more complex than any of them could fathom. She added that not even gold square appraisal specialists could decipher it and deduced that their enemy was a platinum square mage. At that very moment, Iolite and Helio met up with another of their associates named Kohakumiya, who was the mage with the power to control the paper golems. They stared at a large chamber which had a very scary-looking monster inside of it, and talked about a guy named Heesval of the Gilded Tower, who was the most skilled caster of divine magic among the platinum squares. Kohakumiya asked how Iolite got him to comply with their plans, and Iolite responded that he unalived him before heading out to find Vermeil and Alto. That evening, Alto had a dream where a much younger version of Vermeil was feeling miserable, and when he tried to console her, he appeared in the midst of a divine entity who told him that he had 2 paths, one being the path of justice that benefits mankind, and the other being a selfish path that only benefits Vermeil and leads to destruction. He woke up and started studying for the bronze exam, but Vermeil told him he needed to be less scared of it, because it would be easy for him since half the student body was going to pass the exam anyway. Alto said he was feeling worried about the practical part of the exam, and about the fact that the student council members were pressuring him to pass the exam. She said he didn't need to be at the desk if he was worried about the practical exam, so she pulled him to the bed and made him do some intensely physical practice with her. On the day of the exam, Alto saw the book which Vermeil used to be trapped in, and realized that he still couldn't read the language in it, but wondered who the mage that trapped her inside of it was. He met up with his friends in school, and walked to the exam location where they noticed that all the foreign students around were staring at them like they were Drake's personal entourage. Cheryl explained that they were doing so because Aradia was a school where 50% of students passed the bronze exam, unlike the rest of the schools where only 10% made the cut because passing the bronze exam was needed to move up to 4th year in their school. When they got to the exam hall, an instructor who looked like a character from The Matrix showed up to explain the exam, and Cheryl revealed that he was the colonel of the Royal Mage Corps named Phalanx. He explained that their practical exam was to fill their mana into a crystal which had a fireball in it, which could measure the amount and quality of their mana. He advised them to pour as much mana as possible into the contained flame, because the amount they're able to provide would determine their score. Unlike many of the other students, Alto felt that the test wasn't going to be simple at all, but Vermeil assured him with a tap on the shoulder and a warm smile. The first student tried as hard as he could but couldn't make the flame in the crystal grow even a bit. The next 2 students summoned their familiars to give them a boost, but still ended up looking like frauds when the crystal flame gave no reaction at all to their magic. Lilia said it was their fault for underestimating the exam despite the warnings of Phalanx, and when her number was called, she summoned Sylphide as she walked to the crystal. She realized that the task was to funnel mana into the flame and not the crystal, because crystal was a mineral that could store mana, meaning the mana wouldn't get to the flame at all if funneled into the crystal directly. She focused on the flame in the middle and controlled her mana in a way that made the flame grow superbly, and Pharynx labeled her as the top scorer so far. Suddenly, a cocky student came by and badmouthed them before making the flames grow in the crystal as well. Cheryl made the flame grow exceptionally, and Marks only managed to raise it to the size of a campfire. Despite the fact that Aradia had the highest number of successful students so far, Pharynx felt disappointed for some reason and called out the last number, which was Alto. An official was about to blow a gasket when she saw Vermeil walk up to stage with him, but Pharynx said he received a note from Ortigia, which informed him that Vermeil was Alto's familiar. Alto scanned the crystal and realized that there was a certain spot in the crystal, which allowed him to pour mana in a straight line that would lead directly into the flame. When he asked Pharynx if he could perform the test from that spot, Pharynx said he could do it wherever he desired, but secretly knew that Arata had figured out the real test, which was to decipher magic formulas. The crystal was a special magical conduit, and the location which a person chooses to supply mana from would greatly determine their chance at success. Out of all the potential locations, the best spot to supply mana was from the back, and only someone who had a keen eye for magic formula like Alto could spot that. Pharynx decided that Alto passed the test before he even performed, and just when Alto was about to pour mana into the best spot, Vermeil made him change his mind by claiming that he wasn't in the right spot. Alto suddenly went back to the original spot and claimed in his head that he was going to become the most powerful mage as he poured mana into the crystal, causing it to manifest as a silver wave of magic flames that covered the entire crystal. Pharynx couldn't believe his eyes because he knew that Alto had intentionally chosen to supply mana into the most difficult spot in the crystal, and Alto supplied even more mana when Vermeil told him not to hold back, causing the crystal to shatter into pieces. Afterwards, he felt apologetic about breaking the crystal but asked Pharynx if he passed the test, and Pharynx didn't hesitate to tell him that he passed with flying colors. Pharynx told him not to get cocky because he could still flunk the bronze exam if he failed the written test. He was shocked about the fact that Alto shattered the crystal, because it was a feat that even Gold Square couldn't pull off, and also something that a Platinum Square would find difficult to accomplish. Alto and the gang were having lunch together in the garden when Cheryl brought up a particular student who was the only person in history to get a perfect score on every exam. He got every question correct, whether it was in the bronze exam, silver exam, or gold exam, and Alto got rattled after hearing that. So Vermeil calmed him down by reminding him that he only needed to get a perfect score in the written exam like he did with the practical exam, to be like this legendary student. Alto and the gang all agreed that they'd do their best to pass the written test in flying colors, and afterwards Vermeil had a little bumpy time in the dark with Alto in order to replenish his mana. On their way to the written exam hall, they spotted the cocky student from earlier who left for the bathroom where he met Iolite. The cocky student tried to walk away, but Iolite unalived him in the blink of an eye and stole his identity. At the moment, Elena and Jessica were having a shower after sword practice, and Jessica asked Elena if she truly believes that Vermeil wasn't a threat. Elena replied that it was their duty as the council to believe in Alto and Vermeil, despite their demonic situation, and revealed that Alto let Vermeil give him her heart because of the love they share. When it was time for the written exam, Alto rushed to the hall where he asked Vermeil to kill time somewhere, since they weren't allowed to bring familiars inside for the written test. When he took his seat, Iolite sat beside him and smiled as he wished him good luck on the test. Vermeil was sitting outside of the testing grounds when some NPCs walked by and talked about how much harder the test was that year, but Vermeil wasn't worried at all because she knew her man was a hard-working guy. During the test, Alto tried to focus on his work but got distracted when he realized that Iolite was napping beside him. He noticed that the questions were harder than the previous year and probably on the level of a silver square exam. When Iolite woke up, Alto felt bad for him because the time for the exam was almost up, but Iolite finished the test in seconds and started pestering Alto about how easy it was. They were interrupted when an instructor came into the hall and informed the guy in charge of the exam that a student was found dead in the toilet. The examiner quickly realized that it was Iolite who was the imposter who had replaced the unalived student, so Iolite created a huge golem that destroyed the hall. The examiner introduced himself as the first lieutenant of the royal militia named Mackenzer, and tried to place him under arrest for destruction of property before getting his arm smashed by Iolite's monster. Iolite asked Alto what he was going to do about it, and Alto realized that he was the one who aided Obsidian. Pharynx managed to save Mackenzer by destroying the monster's hand and jumping away with him. Just then, Vermeil showed up through a window and told Alto to cover her, while she launched a dark magic blast at the monster, which ended up getting blocked. Pharynx identified Iolite as the youngest mage to be promoted to Platinum Square, and a prodigy that outclasses every other mage out there. Alto realized that Iolite was the super mage that Cheryl described earlier, and Pharynx asked why he let all the students escape easily, rather than take some as hostages. Iolite replied that he didn't need hostages as he summoned a magic staff that transformed his golem into a scarier form, before asking them if they thought they could stop him. Lilia, Cheryl, Marks, and some guards tried to rush in to help Alto and the gang against Iolite, but they realized that they were made to be running in circles as a result of a transference magic which was secretly cast by Helio. Alto, Vermeil, and Pharynx tried desperately to land critical hits on Iolite's monster, but they ultimately got shot down as he destroyed what was left of the room. The monster grabbed onto Vermeil, so Alto angrily ordered him to let go of her. His body started glowing with a golden aura as he marched towards Iolite and fired a barrage of magical attacks that destroyed the monster which was holding Vermeil. As Vermeil fell, she noticed that Alto's aura had turned silver, and when Iolite created 2 more golems, Alto destroyed them easily with golden blasts. Alto's aura overflowed as he said he'd protect Vermeil, and he charged at Iolite only to get struck back by a spear-wielding monster which Iolite summoned. When Iolite came in close to him, he asked what they planned to do with Vermeil, so Iolite revealed that his group planned to harness the power of Vermeil in order to destroy the world. When he started mouthing off about how demons were bad, Alto got so angry that he broke through the monster's spear with his bare hands and charged at Iolite again, only to get wrestled down easily. Vermeil transformed into her demon form and charged at Iolite, but he held her back using some magic chains and used a special spell that immediately took Vermeil out of action. Iolite tried to approach an unconscious Vermeil but noticed that Alto was holding his leg, so he kicked him off. Alto still refused to back down, so Iolite made his golem fire a powerful magic blast at Alto, which ended up getting blocked by a mysterious wave of magic. Alto noticed that the magic came from the book which Vermeil used to be trapped in, and the deity from Alto's dreams appeared from the book. Alto asked her who she was, so she revealed that she was the Mage of Beginnings who sealed Vermeil into the book. She explained that the form she was currently in was only a lingering memory of her true self, which she buried in the book the day Vermeil was sealed as a form of preparation for what's to come. Arata was about to get mad at her for sealing away Vermeil, but the mage told him that she did it at Vermeil's request because of some bad things which Vermeil had done. She opened up a magic circle on Vermeil and informed Alto that Vermeil was being trapped by her own trauma before asking him if he was prepared to accept her for all that she was. Alto said he was ready to stand by Vermeil, so she gave him a key which transported him into the world of Vermeil's mind. Alto and the mage were floating in midair when she informed him that he was within the world of memories which Vermeil wishes to forget. Murata asked about Iolite, so she assured him that the area they were in was detached from time and space, meaning that the time that passed there meant nothing in the real world. She warned him to be careful because he would be trapped in that world if he failed to save Vermeil, and informed him that the events that were about to unfold took place over 500 years ago, when Ortygia was just the name of a continent. Alto was shocked about the fact that Vermeil was alive back then, and he saw a little version of her running cheerfully while holding a ring of flowers. Little Vermeil met up with a nun with whom she wore the flower ring, and Alto was stunned by the sight of Vermeil being so cheerful and innocent. The Maid of Beginnings informed him that Vermeil was happy back then, but the form of happiness she was experiencing was different from the happiness she currently had in the real world. When other of her playmates showed up and hugged Vermeil and the sister, the mage explained that they were Vermeil's family who weren't related by blood. Little Vermeil was scarfing down some food when a girl named Miel warned her that she'd choke if she didn't slow down, and things turned out just as Miel said it would. Vermeil complimented Miel's cooking, and they talked about the flower hat which Vermeil made for the sister. The mage narrated to Alto that Vermeil and her family lived in a rundown abbey and were happy despite the fact that they were dirt poor. The sister told Vermeil that she was a demon while tending to her hair, and Vermeil brought up the fact that demons were believed to be evil beings before asking why the sister was nice to her despite being a holy person. The sister replied that it was because Vermeil was part of their family, and Alto was surprised that the sister knew about Vermeil being a demon. The mage said she was the only one that knew back then, and revealed that back in the days, demons were more feared by humans than they were in the present time. Alto asked why Vermeil decided to seal herself away despite having a family, and the mage asking him to be prepared for the hard part of the story which they were about to witness. Some kids in town started throwing stones at Vermeil while calling her a demon, and all sorts of names because they discovered her horns, and this made Alto angry. Miele came by and scared the kids off, but noticed the horns on Vermeil's head, and Vermeil immediately started crying while apologizing for keeping it a secret. Instead of hating her, Miel hugged her tightly and promised to keep her safe as a big sister. When they got back home, people in the town gathered and started throwing stones at their door, but the sister assured Vermeil that it would be okay because God would come and save them. The townspeople became more enraged as they rioted outside of Vermeil's home, and the mage explained that it was because they were experiencing a plague which ended dozens of lives in the town, which they decided to blame on Vermeil. The sister went outside and tried to convince the people that Vermeil was but an innocent little girl, but they still kept raving, so Muel told Vermeil to leave them and run away from time. She assured her that they'd figure something out and be a family again, but started crying as she apologized for not being able to stay with her and keep her safe. Vermeil promised her that she'd be alright and called her the greatest big sister in the world, as they all shared a group hug. She tried to run away but tripped in an alley where some of the angry townspeople were searching for her. She overheard them talking about how they planned to torture Miel and the family to get her location, so she got back up and ran back into the town. Vermeil decided that she was done running away and decided to surrender herself in order to assure the safety of everyone else in her family. But when she got to the abbey, she saw that the sister and Miel had been hanged. She started to remember the good times she had with them and got so overwhelmed by sadness that her powers went haywire, transforming her into her demon form, which created a huge wave of aura that destroyed the town. Alto watched in shock, and the Mage of Beginnings explained that they took far more lives than the plagues ever did. This was the point where her loneliness began, because she wouldn't be sealed until 200 years later, when she was already well known as the strongest scourge to afflict mankind. She said Vermeil's power was the most difficult to control among demonkind, and asked Alto if he'd still stand by her despite everything he's seen. Alto met up with the little Vermeil, who felt terrible about what she'd done and comforted her with a hug as he assured her that he'd stay with her. Vermeil regained her mature form but still cried in his arms, as she said she deserved to be hated for her crimes. But Otto said he'd never hate her and added that her family as well would have never hated her. Alto held her hands and said that he'd stay by her side even if the entire world turned against them, and finished off by saying that he wanted to stay with her forever, before sharing a kiss with her. When the two of them returned to the normal world, Alto finally said that he loved her, and promised her that she'd never be alone on his watch. Iolite was surprised that they managed to break through his magic chains and lock, which he said was a mythic-level magic item, but he decided to go all out with them, in their final showdown. He summoned his spear-wielding monster and upgraded it into a more terrifying form that had 2 spears and started yapping about how Vermeil was evil because her powers could obliterate the world. He said his group were going to use her powers to destroy the world, and once again started bad-mouthing them until Alto told him to shut his trap. Alto said that all of the beliefs about how Vermeil was the ultimate boogeyman didn't matter, because none of them could see the real Vermeil. He brought up how Vermeil loves deserts, looks pretty when she smiles and felt horribly after what happened to her home city, and claimed that he'd never let Iolite lay a finger on her ever again. Iolite smiled cockily as he said there was no way for them to stop the powerful magical attack which his golem was charging up. Alto told Vermeil that they were going to fight back with everything they had, and they combined their radas by holding hands, allowing Alto to create a powerful crystal attack that destroyed the golem's attack and the monster itself. Iolite said he was surprised because he didn't think they'd last that long, and emitted a more ominous aura as he tried to cook up a Dragon Ball level attack to finish them off, but he was interrupted by Helio's voice that asked him to stop. Helio came out of a dark portal, making Iolite realize that their time was up, and all it took was a single glance for Atta to realize that she was a Platinum Square mage. Iolite tried to beg for a little more time, but she refused by pointing out that dragging the fight on would be pointless since things were getting busy on the outside. When they walked away, Alto asked what they were really after, and Iolite gave an unclear answer as he promised that he'd be back to finish them off someday. Alto tried to chase after them, but Vermeil stopped him, and he got startled when the Mage of Beginnings named Fatima appeared behind Vermeil. Fatima asked Alto once again if he was ready to stand by Vermeil's side even if the world turned against him, and Alto said yes. So Fatima felt glad about the fact that she entrusted her to him. Alto promised Vermeil that he'd become the strongest mage in the world so he could protect her from everyone that came after her, and this moved her to tears. Fatima told Alto to take care of Vermeil, who was her dear friend, and assured Vermeil that she didn't need to worry with Alto by her side. As Fatima vanished, the realm they fought transformed back into the academy, and Alto found the book Vermeil was sealed in on the floor, so he handed it to her. Just then, Lilia showed up and hugged Alto, while Marx and Cheryl also made their way into the room. Days later, Orada had a sparring match with Jessica, who easily trashed him before Chris arrived and offered to train with him as well. She promised to be gentler than Jessica, but it didn't take long before she started using John Cena's strongest moves on him, and it didn't take long before he was defeated again. Despite all of the beating Alto received, he thanked the ladies for taking out time from their busy schedules to train with him and asked them to spar with him again sometime. Jessica asked why he needed to get stronger that badly, and he replied that he wanted to protect Vermeil from everyone who would come after her on his own. She was so moved by his heroic riz that she started blushing, and Chris teased him for being a corny lover boy. That evening, Alto and Vermeil were having another of their intense lip wrestling sessions, when Vermeil told him that her chest was throbbing. When he asked to see it, she opened up her melons and he noticed that she was feeling shy about it for the first time. In bed that night, Vermeil thanked Alto for accepting her and loving her despite what she was, and said that she loved him more than anyone else in the world. Arata said he loved her back, and the two of them spent the rest of the night doing some intense yoga on their bed. The next day, Alto was in a student council meeting, where Elena decided to take a bold step against those that terrorized their school, and all of the executive officers agreed, so she asked Alto how he felt about the decision. Alto said it didn't matter who he had to face because he was willing to go to the ends of the earth for Vermeil. A while later, Lilia celebrated the fact that they all passed the bronze exam. However, Arata was celebrating his good results with Vermeil in a very sus way, with Vermeil in a private corner, and she promised to be with him forever as they kissed. Do you think Alto and Vermeil would ever get strong enough to defeat Iolite and Helio? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.